Good evening. You're listening to Truth Cat Radio at truthcatradio.com. The current time is 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm your host, Richard Kary, and this is Beyond the Matrix. This airing, we have Thomas Sheridan once again joining us. Thomas is an author, artist, musician, satirist, and independent researcher. We are going to be getting to Thomas in just a moment. I do first want to reach out to everyone to remind you all that we are completely listener supported here. We don't do any monetizing. We don't do any sort of corporate advertising. All our archives are free. So that being said, please help out and support the station. We do have a support page with PayPal as a hassle-free option. A lot of people like the ease and security of PayPal, and any little bit helps. As I always say, we appreciate our regular contributions, but those little bits some people have at the end of the month, last-minute decisions to help out, sometimes really help keep everything maintained, and always trying to enhance things for the listeners here. And please like us on Facebook and share. We do appreciate all that Facebook traffic. Is one of the primary ways we promote here. Now, as I said, Thomas is an author, musician, artist, satirist, and independent researcher. He's the author of a number of books, including Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath, and The Anvil of the Psyche. Thomas has written extensively on socio-cultural engineering and propaganda, analyzing the aristocracy's influence through policy think tanks, which has led to the creation of Fascism, Bolshevism, and the current cultural Marxism, which has rendered society in a state of arrested development. Thomas, thank you so much for coming with us on Truth Cat again. Hello, Thomas. I'm sorry. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had it muted while you were talking there. I wasn't. Yeah, it's good to be back.
Thank you. You decided for a topic, Magic Occult Mind Control. So I'm sure the listeners are interested to hear you elaborate on this.
Well, in what specific aspect do you want me to talk about it? Because it's an enormous subject.
Certainly. Well, I mean, I don't know if first you want to just tell us, all what your plans are at the moment. I don't know if there's anything, currently on your agenda for this autumn.
Well, I've got a book coming out, hopefully before the end of the year. Just finishing up the final drafts of that. Doing an event near London in the beginning of November called the WakenCon, and then I'm going to go into hibernation for Christmas. So hopefully at the end of the year I'm going to wind it down, because it's been quite a hectic and busy year. I've done a lot this year. But on the subjects of what you just mentioned then, what people need to understand is that reality is objective. Reality that they face every day is a mirage. It's not what they think it is. It doesn't happen by mistake. It doesn't happen by osmosis. It's an illusion that's been created for them. And the primary method of this illusion and how it's created is sorcery. Now, I know that sounds bizarre to people hearing this, but all it is changing their version of reality and entrapping them into a false reality that doesn't actually exist anywhere except in their minds. They are helpless marionettes suspended within a sea of sorcery. They follow the opinions of corporations. They follow the opinions of politicians and the mass media. They have emotional connections to things that they shouldn't have emotional connections to, for no other reason than they've been told and they've been orchestrated to have these emotional connections to them. These connections can range from anything from an emotional connection to a sports team on the other side of the world, or on a little black box in the corner of their room that all their emotions and energies are poured into, to a politician they hate and despise because they've been told to hate and despise them. And the reason for this is because the control system has them all concentrating their psychic energy on everything and anyone but themselves. And the reason why they do this is because they want to make people as helpless as fish in an aquarium. And that's what it's really all about.
And just trying to, use the same techniques as Pavlov. It seems a lot of times, just get certain associations to trigger certain emotional responses in the people. I know it's been discussed how a lot of the sporting events have always been important places for, national anthems, patriotic music and sentiments to get that association transferred from, the enthusiasm for the team to your rulers, right?
Yeah, nationalism, but also the corporations who advertise and the focus. A lot of this is one of the things I've noticed about sports in my lifetime is that they mostly take place at night now. More and more they're done under floodlights. You rarely see sports now that happen during the day. And this is like a magic ritual. You basically stripped of all your sensory. If you're in the stadium watching this sport event at night, do you actually know that reality exists beyond the floodlights? All you can see is a sea of blackness. And all your focus and all your concentration, all your psychic energy is contained within the stadium and is ultimately focused on the altar, which is the field or the pitch where the actual event is happening. And it's surrounded by advertising. It's filled with advertising. And you're basically worshipping at the temple of commerce. You are aware of nothing else. Your whole five sensory perception has been stripped, and the reality of the greater world has been demolished around you in order to keep all your psychic intent within the stadium. And then once they have that, and this all began with things like the Nuremberg rallies and the 1936 Olympics in Germany, all you have to do then is put the agency required in order to what you want to spellbind them with in the center of that light. And you basically have spellbound them. This goes right back to the mystery plays of ancient Greece and carried all the way through the operas and the work of Wagner and Mozart. And it's with us today as the Monday Night Football or whatever you're having in your country.
Yes, and you mentioned the advertisers heavily invested there. Certainly in the entertainment industry as well. There's just so much reality television now too. It seems like a whole new avenue they have now to influence us, program us.
Yeah, it's reality TV is quite an apt term as well, because it's creating a false reality for people to believe in. All these celebrity fly on the wall or housewife shows or nonsense that started up back in the old days with the MTV series The Real World. That was the gestation of it. But this really continues on in things like soap operas, because soap operas before reality TV was how they socially engineered people to get them to think a certain way, buy a certain product, dress a certain way, and behave a certain way. All done through things like that. It's just belief that somehow what's on the box or what's on the TV is the real world, and what I experience is a dysfunctional version of the real world on the TV, and therefore I must modify my behavior and lifestyle in order to synchronize with the real world on the TV.
The reality shows seem to really love to glorify just the most underachieving, common sort of things now, glorifying the most obscure, sort of tastes and peculiarities, people might have. I don't know. It almost is just a way of trying to keep everyone else down by pushing up, these fringe aspects of society,
Yeah, that's been going on a long time. Well, they appeal to base aspects. Hugh Hefner's dropped dead today. I mean, he built his career on understanding that, men are basically, sex robots in many ways. And that's all he did. He didn't do anything evil or anything like that. He was just a clever guy who realized that by selling this, by marketing to the libido and marketing to the unresolved sexual frustrations of males all over the world, he could get incredibly rich. And he did. And that's because the base instinct is where they will always hit the meat golems, as I call them. That's my name for the average person in society who thinks about nothing other than what's on TV, a meat golem. And these meat golems, they're only concerned with base things, sex, addictions, money, status, a sense of egotistical gratification by having something someone doesn't have, or they have it before them. And the more people they can get like that, and the less people they can deal with that have a more fulfilling desire of what the kind of life that they want, the happier they are. It's just about business. It's just about bringing the customer base down to a certain low level of functionality based primarily on their instincts, and then that will allow them to market to the largest segment of society. Most of the human race are garbage anyway, and they know this, and that's what they aim at.
Yes, it's I don't know, really disturbing just how much they have it down to a honed science. You were mentioning like the sex industry, and I mean, yeah, there are certain proven techniques that once the approaches with everything to take, pretty much works again and again. We see this in the entertainment, the advertising for the products, and now toward just the kind of shifts, in the global thinking. I mean, we have. Well, it seems like the U.S. is doing a lot of warring for economic concerns. And so, of course, there's a lot of propaganda out there politically as well now. I don't know if you'd want to bring that into the discussion at all.
Well, I don't think the USA has never fought a war that wasn't economic. Even their Civil War was about that. Even the War of Independence was about economics. Every expansionist overseas war the USA was ever involved in, with the exception of Vietnam. That's a weird one. I don't quite understand why they're in Vietnam, other than probably just to cull the population of young black men or something. But yeah, generally they're economic wars. That's just how it works. There's, that's all, empires are interested in, is the procurement of resources and territory. And that's economics at the end of the day. And that will never change. That will never go away. We'll always have war. We'll always have this. The thing is, for people like us to try and get enough people to listen, where they don't do these stupid things, where they don't succumb to the sorcery, where they don't succumb to the mind control, and they walk away and live their own life. And my attitude is that the human race is pretty much a disaster on many levels. And we're in a very low level of evolution. You often hear this. You get this idea that somehow we're on the cusp of, we're like the best humans to ever were. I think we're probably garbage compared to what the humans were of the past. And we're not getting any worse. We're not getting any better. We're actually getting much worse. Now the thing is that when you come to realize that basically you're surrounded by these marionettes who do everything the media tell them, these meat golems, the important thing is to make sure that you and the ones you love are not dragged down by them. And that's where awareness comes into it. That's where awareness is really important. And again, idealism is not going to is not going to reverse the situation. The thing is awareness. Awareness is very, very important. And talking about it, like I do believe passionately in the idea of the collective unconscious, that if more and more of us are talking about it in a non-hysterical way, very as pragmatic as possible, and as straightforward as possible, we can help people who should be helped and get them out of the system, and allow them to be the best version of themselves that they can be. And that's the best we can hope for. And I think that's a worthy goal.
Yeah, I would say so. And yeah, I have still been open-minded toward the idea of the universal consciousness as well. It seems like one of the oldest held beliefs. You go back to the ancient Gnostics, just writings in, I think it's in India, perhaps the oldest. But it definitely is something that shows further merit to look into. I don't know. I didn't want to stay too much on politics unless there were some certain things you wanted to add. I'm sure the whole occult aspect people are curious about, that we were citing here, like magic occult. A lot of people associate a lot of this with Satanism, as they call it. I don't know where you stand spiritually, Thomas, but even for those who aren't religious, I suppose the metaphor would be just what your motives are, and who you're really, what sort of interest you're serving at the end of the day, right?
Well, the reason why they associate it with Satanism is because they don't know what Satanism is, firstly. And secondly, they're coming from a Christian viewpoint. So if you're someone like me who has absolutely no use for Christianity at all and sees it as a religion that creates weak men who turn the other cheek and love their enemies, that makes them slaves and sheep, well, then you'd be horrified by the idea of a Satan or a devil, or someone like a Lucifer who could think for themselves and say, no, I'm not going to put up with that crap. Now, this is the problem with Christianity. Christianity creates weakness. It creates weak, servile people who sit down and think we have to be like Jesus, and we have to turn the other cheek, and we have to love our enemy, until your enemy is driving a bulldozer over you, and you're, both cheeks have been well slapped. This is a huge problem for me with Christianity, especially as the fact that the history of Christianity is a vicious, murderous, imperialistic dogma that has brutalized and butchered its way across the planet and left nothing but a sea of blood and mountains of corpses while it proclaims itself to be the religion of peace. Now, this is a real issue. That's the real issue people need to deal with. I don't care if you're Christian. I don't care if you're an atheist. I don't care what you are. I don't care what people are. I don't care what their religious is. I will ignore them once they don't try to convert me. And this thing of the Satanism stuff and of confusing it with the occult is really a lot of ignorance. Well, first of all, there's no such thing as Satan. It doesn't exist. The idea appeared about 600 or 700 years ago, when the term Satan was used to describe people who were born Christian, but for one reason or another dropped out of Christianity. They stopped believing, maybe they became atheistic, that kind of thing. And this whole thing is when you start looking into it, you realize this is also part of the sorcery. Why does a person immediately say, oh, anything to do with magic and the occult must be Satanism? Well, the reason for that is they've been programmed. Why? Who has programmed them? Well, Christians. And it's as simple as that. It's a very interesting thing when to change your view and perspective of the world. It's like nationalism. You grow up in a certain country and you start thinking people in other countries have something wrong with them because they're not you. But if you were to take your perspective and put it over there, you would find it the other way around, or you'll get another aspect of it. And this is, I think, a big part of people, if they want to wake up, is they need to step out of their dogmatism, and they need to they need to look at perspectives from a whole thing. And I think the occult thing is a classic example of that. It's a shame that people automatically ridicule it as negative, because a lot of the positive things like psychology and art and many other things that have actually enhanced the human condition have come out of these occultic ideas, even many great scientific discoveries.
Yes, well, it seems like the people who use Christianity to rule the people don't necessarily, adhere to the tenets that it it proposes. You know, I mean, the idea is in the New Testament, for that matter, are, you know, at the very least, a lot more humane than the, you know, the depiction we have from the Old Testament.
Yeah, well,
you know,
to a point, you have to remember that Jesus Christ referred to Gentiles as dogs. Christians don't want to accept that. It's in there in their own book, because most of them don't actually read the Bible. They just think, oh, Jesus is this lovely fairy from the Middle East who has nothing but goodness in him. But when you actually look at it, he wasn't, you know, Christianity was not a new religion. It was just a radical sect of Judaism. And for the first 300 years, Christians were just Jews. They were just Jews who were kind of marginalized by mainstream Judaism. It wasn't until the Roman Empire that said, this religion is absolutely useful to us. We can take it and we can make everyone in the empire Christians. They'll all sit down and they'll do as they're told because they'll love their enemy and they'll turn the other cheek. And that's the reason how you're a Christian. I was once a Christian, and how Christianity came about.
Yeah, no, I mean, it certainly has been used to colonize and convert, you know, a great many people and across many continents. Yeah, there's no denying that. It's interesting how many political systems, though, will even use it in its foundation. I mean, even when you look to, you know, in the U.S. here, I mean, what, you know, the original tenets that the Constitution and Bill of Rights are you know, formulated around, you know, it's what it describes as common law, which is in the form of the Ten Commandments. You know, I mean, this system seems to just be drawn from very often for, you know, an idea of morality in the West, you know, regardless of someone's belief.
Absolutely. That's a very, very good point. The founding fathers weren't even Christians. They were deists. I mean, many of them were openly anti-Christian. They were mostly all Freemasons. And they were actually at one point quite vehemently against the idea of the U.S. being a Christian nation. This is what makes it so funny when you have these Christian politicians in the U.S. who want to actually say, you know, get back to the Christianity of our founding fathers. That's exactly what didn't take place. But yeah, you're right. They were these Ten Commandments. I always find it interesting how the Ten Commandments are laid out, that actually thinking for yourself is worse than murdering another human being, this kind of thing. And yeah, that's the early history of America and the founding fathers has been very corrupt in a lot of ways. There were men who were a product of the Enlightenment. They were nearly all occultists through Freemasonic circles. They were basically Benjamin Franklin was a bit of a strange one, but the rest of them seemed to be quite healthy in their relationship with Freemasonry, and definitely were men of their time who were trying to build this new nation, and they did successfully, it has to be said, out of these kind of ideas of the European Enlightenment, which for lots of reasons were never going to take off in Europe, mainly because the previous magicians in the royal families had spellbound the masses too much to love royalty. But yeah, that's exactly it. It's like it's amazing how it infiltrates everything in the West. And the reason is it's because it came from the Roman Empire. It's been very good at subjugating people. That's the main reason. And
well, the words you tie in for the title here, Magic Occult Mind Control. Well, I don't know. Would you like to, you know, elaborate more on, you know, why you put all those words together?
Because let's talk about magic, right? Black magic is when you try to alter the consciousness of another person, or to affect them spiritually or psychologically in some way without their permission. And that's really what black magic is. The idea of I could make you do something, make my neighbor do something, make another person do something, either unknowingly or against their will, through manipulation of some form, to get a result that I need. Say blackmail would be a classic example of black magic. These kinds of ideas. But however, because of this bad press, we never hear of the idea of actually making ourselves the best version of the human being that we should be. And a lot of this has to do with saying, okay, I'm a blank slate. I don't care what I was raised, what religion I was raised in, what's political or any kind of cultural belief I was raised in. I'm going to discard all that. I'm not going to throw it away. I'm just going to put it to one side. And then I'm going to generate an engagement with reality that's based on me looking objectively at it without these preconditioned programs that I was raised with. And you suddenly become quite aware very quickly, in fact, if you do it honestly, that you have been mind controlled all your life. Everything, just about everything you believe in has been a product of an idea that someone stuck into your consciousness. Now, for many people, when this happens, it can be quite a frightening thing. For some, and that's usually based on an egotistic thing, because people like to believe it's because of our education system that everyone is smarter than that we as an individual are a lot smarter than we think we are. In reality, we're not. And when we discover that we're not, for many people, that can be a terrifying experience. So they jump right back into the matrix, right back into the control system, because there's comfort in there. There's comfort in the fact that if I'm part of a winning team, a cultural winning team, a social winning team, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with culture. There's lots of wonderful things in various cultures. But if that's what your whole personal identity is wrapped around, you've got a problem. So many people choose that rather than to go the way of the hermit and, blaze their own way through society. Because, as you know, it comes with a difficult price to start thinking for yourself, especially when you start, suppose you like you say, like your show says, beyond the matrix. Well, when you go beyond it, it's very difficult to relate to the people who are still very stuck within it. And it's very difficult for them to relate to you. So it's a lonely path. But basically what you're doing through this path of the hermit is breaking the mind control.
Right. And yeah, certainly for any of us who've, participated in these sort of things, these media platforms, interviews, putting out different articles and such. We all have friends and family who of course are still in that matrix, and so it can be difficult for all of us. I don't know if you have any insights or advice for people on any of that.
Yeah, the best thing is to not take yourself too seriously, and not the first thing is, if you do kind of wake up, is don't be evangelical about it, because your evangelical need to convert other people or wake other people up, I'm talking about in a kind of not an aggressive way, but in a pushy way, that directly comes from Christianity. What you're trying to do is you're spreading the gospel. You just have a new gospel, that's all. And that's not going to work for you. That's only going to blow up in your face. The best thing is to accept it, deal with it, and then try to enjoy this new knowledge that you become aware of. Suddenly, if you can do this, it becomes amusing to you. For instance, I'll give you an example. You have all these people in America and all around the world who, for some reason, known only to themselves, seem to think that every problem in their lives is caused by Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the epicenter of everything that's wrong in their lives. He is the devil to them, if the devil existed. And yet, Donald Trump has done nothing to them personally. Nothing at all. He has knocked on the door. He hasn't shagged their wife. He hasn't stolen their money. He hasn't, kicked their dog. But for some reason, millions of people all over the world have this visceral hatred of Donald Trump. Why? Because they have been socially engineered and mind controlled to have it. Now, I've actually seen people descend into utter and total psychosis since he got elected. I'm talking about extreme mental illness, where they constantly, and I mean constantly, post nothing on their social media except how evil or what horrible thing, which usually is nothing. It's some kind of mirage or self-hex psychosis in their mind that Trump did today. As if it means anything, as if them being annoyed about it achieves anything, as if them sharing it on Facebook or Twitter accomplishes anything. It accomplishes nothing. It drives them insane. It drives them crazy. And this fascinates me because I find it extremely entertaining. I have to say that Donald Trump is the most interesting, most entertaining president of all time, simply because he's fired up millions of psychotic and unhinged people. And it's really funny to watch. I find it tremendously entertaining, especially when they flip the coin and then put their hopes in a mental case, psychopath, mass murderer like Hillary Clinton. I find that even funnier. Now, these people are actually not only annoyed by Trump, there's nothing wrong with being annoyed by a politician or annoyed by a celebrity, but they're actually disturbed by him. I mean, they're actually losing sleep. They cannot think straight. And why? All they have to do is say to themselves, it doesn't matter. It's not important. It accomplishes nothing. And suddenly all that psychic energy that they poured into hating Donald Trump is released for them to do things in their lives that can be more creative, that can actually accomplish things, that can actually make them have a more enjoyable experience of life. So what's been the result of this? Trump grows stronger. Because, let's get back to the occult again, they have turned Donald Trump, and I'm completely 100% serious here, the ones who hate him have turned him into a living god. They poured so much psychic energy into him, all it has done is fed him and kept him in power. And you see, the archetypes and the behavior, and we talked about the collective unconscious earlier on, it always shows up somehow.
I'm sorry, I'm sitting here just loving this. You Hillary Clinton. Oh my God! Take LOL. Okay, come on, jeez, my God. There should be a laugh track back here. Jeez.
In what way?
The Donald Trump, the psychosis, and the way you described it was so perfect.
Okay, you're agreeing with it.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay.
The social media reaction to the people who are no, but when you said
they're losing their minds,
when you said that they're so falling behind the pedophile, mass murderer, cannibal, whatever, it's like, it's so true.
Yeah.
How could anybody be so stupid?
Oh, but they are. But that goes to show you how good.
I couldn't hold back.
No problem. That goes to show how controlled they are. That goes to show how out of touch with reality they are. Well, I mean, like, does hating Donald Trump pay your bills? Does it make your flowers grow in your garden? It achieves absolutely nothing except that it robs you of psychic energy. So therefore, as I said, they've turned him into a god, right? And the proof of them having turned Donald Trump into a god, and get ready for this one, is they are now genuflecting on one knee before their supreme master and don't even realize that's what they're doing. And that, my friends, is sorcery.
We have a lot of, pressure, basically, in Europe and in America now for politically correct thinking. One way I see a lot of mind control now is the attitude everyone is supposed to take toward endless influx of these refugees, and we're getting so many reports too, Thomas, from everywhere that, to a large degree, these aren't people fleeing war zones. Large amounts are just economic refugees from countries that are, are happy to give us, the people who couldn't make it in their country, and, they get to be more focused on the best and brightest, leaving us with this issue. But yeah, the pressure and even people going to jail just for speaking out more and more.
Yeah.
Freedom of speech seemed to trend from the U.S. outward in the past. This setting a great example for such a high standard. But now I worry the opposite could be in store for the future. We're seeing so many restrictions in Europe. Will that simply just spread to the U.S. in the future? And there are just more and more topics, that people can't really speak out about. It's starting to seem dangerous out there, right?
But I think it's flipping now. I was like that until relatively recently. If you went on to say, like, I looked on the comment sections of British or Irish newspapers, and up until recently, if anyone said anything that was not politically correct, they were ganged up on and attacked. Well, guess what? It's flipped. It's flipped now. And more Europeans are now getting very, very anti-politically correct and unpolitically correct and not afraid to say anything. And the politicians are not running scared yet. The cultural Marxists and the social end, they're not running scared yet. But this has taken them by surprise. So, that people, the thing is, they want racists. They want people to be racist because it's easy for them to point at a person and call them a racist. What they don't want is someone who says, I've no problem with refugees once they're genuine refugees. Women, children, people have been disabled by the wars. But I also don't want healthy people coming here who are not, who are male, fighting age or whatever, because they should be back in their own country trying to liberate it. And also people are, you see, America's a different issue than Europe. Europe has been flooded with refugees mainly from the Islamic world, from the Middle East, as a result of the wars that the like of Bush and Tony Blair and Obama and Hillary Clinton created and continued over there. And they're flooding into Europe and creating a kind of a craze where they're coming from everywhere, from North Africa and everywhere. And the European Union and the European main powers, I'm talking the likes of Germany and France would be with that, Britain, they're saying things like, well, we got to get ready for an Islamic future. Now, the reason why they're saying that is because they have lost control of the situation. They're out of control. They've lost it. It's almost like a small hole has appeared in the ship and it's sinking. And the captain of the ship are saying things like, well, we better get used to sinking to the bottom of the ocean. When in reality, all it takes is somebody to go over to that small hole and plug it. And that's because the captain is out of control of his ship. And the same thing is happening with the main powers in Europe. They're out of control of the ship. Now, they've tried to do the bully tactic in the 1984 thing. It's not working. It's not working because it's not the left. You have to remember, the left, not only in Europe but in the United States, have become increasingly psychotic. And when someone becomes psychotic, often things will happen like body mutilations. They'll start pulling their fingernails out, pulling their hair out, biting the skin off the side of their fingers. This is what all the transgenderism is all about. This is the left going into complete and utter psychosis. And they're hacking off their sexual organs. They're doing things like this because they're losing. The cultural Marxists are losing. And this is where all the transgenderism is coming from. It's people who are realizing they have no future because Europe is changing, America is changing, and we're swinging away in vast numbers from we should say the new left, what was produced, say, since the 60s on. Not the Labour left that existed before that, but the social engineering, cultural Marxist left. It's dying, it's falling apart. And that's why they see Trump in the same way as, Attila the Hun was seen as his army marched towards cities. They are seeing Nigel Farage in England in the same way. They're terrified of the change because they know they have no future. And this is why everyone from left-wing cultural Marxist students all the way up to college professors are behaving and acting and going completely psychotic. It's the same thing as the Trump psychosis. They know the game is up, and this is not an unusual thing. This has happened throughout history. In fact, there used to be, prior to World War II, there was an area that was isolated. It was like an enclave called the Danzig. It was where Krakow in northern Poland is. It was mostly Germans living there, and it was annexed from Germany at the end of World War I, sorry. And as World War II was approaching, the locals in the enclave of Danzig knew that they were screwed because it was only a matter of time before Hitler and the Third Reich moved in. And they actually went insane. It was like the end of the world, an apocalyptic self-realization. And there was all kinds of, sexual insanity, everything from bestiality. Everyone was on drugs. People were doing crazy things because they knew it was over, and it was over. And that's exactly what's happening with these people. So though it looks bleak in Europe sometimes, I can tell you for a fact things are changing. You've got a new right-wing party in Germany that's not afraid of being called Nazis, because they're not Nazis. They're just saying stop to the likes of Angela Merkel. I go to Germany a fair bit. I meet more and more Germans who are like they're silently disgusted at what's being done to their country and to this continent. And so the tide is turning. I think the likes of Brexit in England and Trump in America has been a catalyst to demolish the old left, which will probably end up in the grave with the likes of Bernie Sanders.
Well, there does seem to be a lot of progress that needs to be made. I don't know. It just seems like a lot of people have really been brainwashed from the media as far as these ways to think. You mentioned the alternative sexualities. A lot of people out of frustration are even taking on, and just the sort of attitude toward the population displacement that a lot of countries are starting to be at the point of facing. But I mean, the kind of laws that are the most draconian are where you can't really question or bring them up at all. I find, a lot of people point out it's very telling, when you can't speak about something whatsoever, like we have, toward World War II revisionism, for example. I mean, why this particular topic? You could go to jail for talking about in countries. When you single something out, doesn't that make it very suspicious?
It does make it suspicious, but it also doesn't disprove it either. I find that there's always a middle ground in these things. They're obsessed with polarizing people on every level. They don't want to have any kind of middle ground discussion. You were saying there about the media. The media has no power anymore. You look at Trump. He had just about every major newspaper, all these annoying, late night talk show hosts, the likes of Jon Stewart, John Oliver, all of them, Colbert, all of them, Jimmy Kimmel, all of them, working nonstop to put him down. And in the end, it all came to nothing, because so-called trolls on the internet, women on things like 4chan, and all these other people creating memes and the Keck thing, demolished the mainstream media, destroyed it, or all its power, all its influence, all its decades of mind control. A handful of people on the internet literally demolished it with memes on things like Facebook and alternative news sites, good ones. And as a result, they invented this thing called fake news. All fake news is the stuff that the mainstream media isn't producing. That's all it is. That's all fake news is. And fake news runs the world. Fake news won. Fake news won. The internet won. The internet piss take artists won. Keck won. The memetics won. And this is the media is finished. I wouldn't even consider that they have a future. Their ratings have dropped. The extreme lengths they're having to try and go to stay in power, and it's not working. Excuse me. I'm positive about these things, because I'm not in a situation where I'm afraid that they'll introduce these. I don't give a toss if they introduce these draconian laws. I'm not bothered one bit. I'll continue living my life, and that's how people should be. Just have the power of invisibility, and the power of invisibility is to pretend that you're playing their game, but smile and just walk by and do your own thing. Again, there's lots of ways to be self-hexed or self-mind control, and one of them is to live in fear of all these things. It doesn't make any difference to me what happens. What happens, the internet, what happens, them. I'll always find a way to survive. The sun will still shine, flowers will still bloom, and we need to be a bit more have a bit more faith in ourselves as individuals, and less in being swayed or being held to the misfortunes of the control system.
But
And I think many people are. I think more and more people are.
Oh yeah, I'd say that like you mentioned, the Trump phenomenon. I think that's a good example of that. I hear Hillary Clinton's new book is out. A lot of the stores are already marking it 40% off because it's selling so poorly. But she seems to be trying to blame everything and anything, just everyone possible for her failure for the election, but herself,
Yeah, it's a typical psychopath. That's a typical psychopath.
But people are seeing through that. There's a lot of that's been out there with the internet now. It's harder to hide your crimes. I mean, we have things like WikiLeaks now. She tried to. I know there are economic reasons with the whole Russia-U.S. conflict, but also she tried to use Russia, I think, as a strong scapegoat for, her own, failings. And any election rigging that has been proven so far has been in Hillary's favor. I don't know. We're hearing this in the independent media, reported quite a lot in the U.S., although you won't hear it on the mainstream media, the corporate media.
Well, Hillary Clinton is so mentally ill that, she ran on a ticket of starting World War III. That was her ticket. There was videos of her saying things like, I will use military against Russia. These are the kinds of things she was saying, as if people wanted to hear that. Secondly, the Russians have no interest in the United States. None at all. There's this idea that somehow they have a big problem with the USA. They don't. There's one nation on earth that has no fear of the USA. It's Russia, even more so than China. They have an enormous military. They may not be the superpower they once were, but they have an enormous military, high-tech Air Force, Navy, you name it. They've got far larger army, and what are they worried about? They're worried about nothing. So why are they interested in the United States? They don't care. They'd rather do business. This is the whole thing. This is what Trump recognized. Trump recognized that Russia wanted to do business. That's it. He's a businessman. He wanted to do business with Russia, not politics. And this horrifies the bureaucrats. A friend of mine said last week, and he's completely bang on, he said it's amazing how many people would rather be ruled by a psychopathic bureaucracy led by a lunatic like Hillary Clinton than actually live in a world where business was being done and everyone had a job. They're so addicted, they cannot imagine life, whether it's the European Union, whether it's the old political system in the US. They cannot imagine life without a bureaucratic, psychopathic empire controlling them, because that's what they want. They don't want freedom. They want the big daddy state. That's what they want. They want that more than anything else. And this is what that's about.
No, definitely. I think communism, the danger of communism is definitely connected to that. Having that security rather than allowing a meritocracy, which is more in line with nature for a people to thrive.
Yeah, I think capitalism, when it's left alone, has been a great thing for humanity. People buying, selling, trading, making things. When it's left alone, is when banks and when regulations, all these heavy regulations that regulated the ordinary people, the small business person, but deregulated the banks. When that came along, and that was Glass-Steagall, that was by Bill Clinton, following on from Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. That's when capitalism became a mess. And suddenly it was difficult for the ordinary person to start a business. This is why so many cities were destroyed by megastores and the Walmarts, and the interior of these towns fell apart and became ghost towns because the traditional stores and service suppliers were wiped out because all the regulations and all the taxation was all in favor of the super corporations, the big chains. I think I think that's been our communism. If we've had a communism in the West, it's been the superstores, the big chains, the gigantic shopping malls, destroying the centers of our cities and the centers of our towns. But I'm seeing even changes on that. I was in the United States recently, and I noticed that some places are not as bleak as they used to be. Where the Walmarts and the Targets and all the big superstores are built around it. I'm seeing smaller stores coming back. I'm definitely seeing a lot more rejuvenation, and I wonder how much of that has to do with Trump and people more confident about starting a new smaller business. I think there could be a lot of truth to that. I don't know. This is my speculation, but that's what I'm seeing.
I know though, regarding corporations, a lot of people do see that as just a major danger. I know that was one thing that that the Third Reich did. I believe they only had corporations that were controlled by and for the good of the nation state, like they're not allowing private corporations because of their. Well, I don't know. I think that now with them giving a personhood and all that there's this very strong danger of them ruling the whole world in the future. We see these mega corporations like Monsanto, and I don't know if you'd like to comment on the pharmaceutical industrial complex, which is just as out of control as as it ever has been still.
Yeah, well, that's mind control. When I go to the United States, I'm amazed when I switch on daytime TV and there's one commercial after the next for some kind of medicine or some kind of cure or some kind of pill. And that's non-stop sorcery. That's non-stop mind control. If you don't have a disease, they'll invent one for you so they can sell you the pill. People need to get better. You see, people need to get better educated about this stuff and stop being hypochondriacs. That's a big part of it. My attitude is, it's like if you're stupid enough to jump and take every single pill that the big pharma advertises you, well, then that's your problem. That's how I feel about these things. The biggest worry for me is like children being medicated against their will, that kind of thing. But as far as adults, if you're if you're some kind of hypochondriac, and it sees that more and more people in the West are, and you have to get the latest pill because you saw a commercial for it, my attitude is, well, then tough luck. You're the dummy, you're the idiot, and the devil knocks on your door. But if you have a brain, you don't open it. A lot of people don't have brains, and they open it up. The power of these pharmaceutical corporations, yeah, again, it's huge, it's growing, it's sinister. I'm not going to take the crap. Simple as that. And more people should think the same way.
And I hear more and more accounts of all these different cancer cures that are getting repressed, and we hear more and more that the chemotherapy is actually ineffective. So I think that whole little niche of the cancer profiting industry, it's for treatment and not curing, basically.
Yeah, well, it's always been like that, and I mean, I've lost count of the number of people I know that died from chemotherapy. It's just that's what killed them. They were doing okay until they weren't falling apart until they were on that. Having said that, I don't know enough about the subject. Most of these alternative cues I hear about are just basically stoners going on about cannabis. Yeah, I know there's cannabinoid receptors in the human body, and it does seem to be some kind of link there. But most of the stuff I'm reading is just like people who just skin up all day, smoke joints, and then they say, "Oh, cannabis cures cancer." It's not that simple. That's not the issue. Is we're not treating the root cause. Why are people getting the cancer in the first place? This is what really needs to be addressed, not imaginary cures or real cures otherwise. It's why are they getting the cancer in the first place? And I think there's a very complex reasons for that. I don't think cancer is quite simply environmental or anything like that. I think a lot of people get it because they kind of expect it or they think they want to get it. And I think, again, that's a kind of a dark sorcery that it's put out there by the mainstream to make people think that they have to get cancer or they're destined to get it. There's a lot of that kind of nonsense goes on. I'll tell you when I first noticed that was during the AIDS thing. I was living in New York when AIDS was really big back in the late 80s. And I can tell you that it wasn't AIDS that killed most of the gay guys I knew. It was the drugs. And they were all back then, if you went to the doctor and you had a cold and you told them you were gay or a drug addict, they diagnosed you as being HIV positive or as full-blown AIDS. They stuck you on terrible drugs like AZT, and you dropped dead in a few weeks. An awful lot of that went on. A lot of people, the media, I can remember Oprah Winfrey, and it's just like the global warming thing, saying that by the year 2000, 1/3 of Americans would be dead from AIDS. Now, these are all things that have been whipped up to make people terrified and hypochondriac. Again, people have to learn how to stand back from that. I mean, to me, the cancer thing is that it's something I don't want to comment on, because I've had people close to me who've died from it, and it's very easy for someone on the internet to like post a picture, his profile picture is a cannabis leaf, to go on about, oh, it cures cancer and all this stuff, when
Right.
you haven't walked in the shoes of the people who have actually gone through it.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there is a method with large amounts of the oil for prolonged periods of time that the one gentleman from Canada innovated, Rick Simpson, I think it is, and other people have followed him and was successful. But no, I mean, I have heard of about 10 or 12 different things, cannabis being only one of them.
Fair enough.
Out there. But yeah, no, the point is that all this is suppressed, and just in a lot of these fields, any natural homeopathic doctors who are successful and well known, you hear about a lot of deaths of these people, certainly. And when you mention the cause of a lot of these things like cancer, well, we hear a lot about the things put in the vaccines, for example, such as mercury and aluminum and other substances, all the additives in our food products that are dangerous and are allowed to be there, and then like we mentioned earlier, the genetic engineering, and people aren't really giving fair study to that.
Yeah, but at the same time too, it's like it's up to people to defend their own lives. If you have concerns about cancer, vaccines and stuff like that, well, get educated, and rather than and then deal with your own life or whatever. Mm-hmm. The people, again, they're too, it's like, I don't care if they wake up or not, or if they walk into the Monsanto hell. That's their choice. At some point in your life, you have to understand that, a lot of people have a death wish. They really do.
Right. Well, we have a little break coming up here for like about 5 minutes. If you want to do anything, you might need to, and could be back with the second hour, Thomas.
Absolutely. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right, everyone, stick around for hour number 2, and later we have the Stephen D. Kelly show coming up. Please stay tuned in for that. I'd like to say hello over to JP at Wolf Spirit Radio and all the listeners there. We do appreciate the simulcast. And please help out the network. Support us with whatever you can. We really do need these donations. It's that time of month as well. And we really just need to keep everything running to bring you all these great guests, topics, and information. That
shout out to my buddy JP. He's a good man.
All right, you guys, shut up. All right, JP, you have no idea we would be dead without JP. Okay.
Yep, he's
seriously,
a good man.
He has pulled us out. He has pulled us from oblivion more than once. So this network owes everything to JP. And Prometheus, his namesake, is essentially a symbol for serving those in need, such as ourselves. So that's what he's all about.
Yeah, any friend of his is a friend of mine.
Well, there you go. Okay. So there you go. I'm just unfortunate that when you're talking about social media and memes and all that wonderful stuff that you left out, Truth Cat Radio was we were built of that stuff. Yeah, we love it. We take very great pride in destroying the New World Order with simple JPEGs. Yeah. Anyway, and that's what's going to drive AI. Zuckerberg basically is under orders to deal with all the memes and the JPEGs, and he can't do it. He cannot have enough humans working for him to look at every JPEG to read what it says and decide whether or not it's not a good thing. And he has to come up with AI in order to do that, because a program cannot detect the pixels, the words that are made of the pixels on the JPEGs.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
FBI can't do anything about it. Nobody can do anything about it. It's extremely powerful. And they spread so fast. One meme, I've had memes spread 60,000 people, 600,000 people. My most successful memes was 600,000 people last time I looked. And yeah.
And if you deliver them with humor, people go mad for them.
And you know what I've learned, though? To a successful meme, the fewer words, the better.
Yep.
3 or 4 words. If you can pull it off in 3 or 4 words, or 2 words, even better.
Like a one-line joke, brevity is the essence of wit. Quick, fast, bang.
Exactly.
You shoot. It's a bullet into their consciousness.
Boom, just like that. It's just got to impress upon their brain just like that, and it's got to be something that jerks them into attention so that they share it. And then instantly it goes viral. All right. I say we're winning. Yeah. Okay. Shout out to all our listeners. We have listeners tonight in Germany, Canada, United Kingdom, Russian Federation. Oh, they're just joining us as I speak. Interesting. Anyway, all the different provinces. It's special shout out tonight to Russian Federation and Germany. Okay. And just to remind everyone, yes, this is Truth Cat Radio, and yeah, we are 100% listener supported, and we do use PayPal only because I don't have a bank account. All right. One day, Truth Cat will be an LLC, and then we will have a bank account. But until then, we use what we can. So if you can help us stay alive and possibly, contribute to our budget, which is very, very meager. However, though, if we can even get as little as $29 up right now, we're going to buy video. Think about that, Thomas. We're going to have very soon the capability, instead of having that little picture up there on Facebook, we're going to have your video, and we're going to record that with sound into MP4s, and we'll be able to distribute that on YouTube with video. Isn't that exciting?
That's the future.
That is the future. Oh my God. And then we'll be able to have graphics and, it's just like a meme. Certainly you can convey so much more information if people are looking at it, and they'll certainly look at it too. We're going to be going from radio into TV just like that. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah, all it takes is $29. So people will help us out. Okay. And like I said, until we become a corporation or something like that, where I can actually have a bank account that isn't going to be attacked the second I try to put money into it, you have to send it to StephenKelley714@gmail.com. That's StevEnKelley 714@gmail.com. All right. And when you do that, if you will, please say that it's for a friend so that they don't take 5 or 10% or whatever the heck it is that they take out of it. All right. I really appreciate it. And yeah, in about an hour, since it looks like the top of the hour right now, we are going to have the Stephen D. Kelly Show come up. And tonight I'm going to be doing a reading from Sun Tzu's Art of War. And I won't just be doing readings. I will be doing analysis and translation. So it should be, and it will be condensed. It's not going to be all the flowing words, of course. It's going to be pretty to the point. So if you want to learn, and this is why we do these programs, is so that you can gain this knowledge, because, certain books out there we all need to understand and to comprehend, so that we can recognize the politics and the policy that's being formulated and being done in our faces. So hopefully you'll stay tuned for that. That'll be the end of our live broadcasting until we come back on Monday with Metaphysical Monday, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern with Shima Moore of Metaphysics and More. And after Shima at 10 p.m. Eastern is Synergy Hour with Anna Anthony. And then on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern is Daryl Nichols with The Daryl Show. And Dave Robbins is on at 10 with Mystic Freedom. And on Wednesday at 10 p.m. we start with Freedom of Joyce, hosted by Terry Joyce. So that brings us back, of course, to Thursday, and hopefully Graham will have his microphone working properly, and he will be starting on time at 6 p.m. Eastern with the Delete the Beast show. And, of course, 8 p.m. Eastern as is Beyond the Matrix, the show you're listening to right now with Richard Kary. Now, if you are listening to this on YouTube, please take a moment to give us a thumbs up and say, make a nice little comment if you can, okay? Nice little comments are great. And also, If you can, please share it on Facebook, share it on social media. If you got Twitter, share it on Twitter. We don't care, just share it. And then when you are on Facebook, go to our Truth Cat Radio Facebook page and like it. Very, very simple to do. We'd really love to have a flood of people joining that Facebook page so that we can reach even more of you, okay? And then when you do see our advertising on your Facebook page, please share it to your Facebook page. That way you won't be the only one to see it. Your friends will also see it, okay? And this is how we create those ripples in the pond that cause our information to spread exponentially, almost like a virus, if you will. So, with that, I am going to, again, remind you that we are listener supported. This is Truth Cat Radio, www.truthcatradio.com. And also, if you're interested, go to our chat room, register a screen name, say hi. And if you want to call in and give these guys crap, the phone number is area code 714-598-3125. I said that kind of slow so you could write it down. If you thought you messed it up, let me say it again. Area code 714-598-3125. Okay, we're taking calls right now. And with that, I'm going to let you go back to the Richard Kary show. Oh, it's not Richard Kary. It's Beyond the Matrix with Richard Kary. And it is September 28th, 2017. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. And yes, we're here with Thomas Sheridan. Thomas is... a man of many talents. He's an author, artist, musician, satirist, and independent researcher. And we've been discussing Magic Occult Mind Control. The many forms this mind control can take, and so a lot of the methods, techniques employed by those who use it on the masses. Well, Thomas, I'm not sure exactly where you'd like to take it. Perhaps some topics we didn't cover in the first hour that maybe been on your mind lately. Important for people to be more aware of these days.
Yeah, what's been on my mind lately? In terms of greater, I think I've spoken most of them there. I don't know. I think, is there anything you want to ask me about? Bringing up a topic or anything?
Well, I would like to hear maybe a little bit more of a description of your books. I mentioned a couple of your books, but how many in total? Do you have?
No, let's go through them. The first one, Puzzling People, came out in 2011, and that was a bestseller, and that was called Puzzling People: The Labyrinth of the Psychopath, and it's still in publication, and it's sold to date about 80,000 copies worldwide, and it was about recognizing and identifying psychopathic individuals in the workplace and in your life, and how to avoid them and how to not have your mind wrecked by them. And in that, I touched on, towards the end, greater scheme things, the political psychopathy. And at the in the appendix, I wrote about, is there a spiritual dimension to this? The publisher asked me to do a follow-up book because that was so successful. And it was called Defeat the Demons. And that flopped. And so it was the psychopathic thing was a one-trick pony, and so there was I do want to do another book about that in future. Defeated Demons was basically Puzzling People Part 2, and I actually think it's a better book, but for some reason it didn't capture the imagination like the first one. I then wrote a book called The Anvil of the Psyche, which is about basically what we're talking about here tonight. I used to be a corporate communications consultant on Wall Street. And so I learned a lot about how to manipulate people's minds, and how basically even things like mass hysteria are engineered by the control grid to get results they want from the population. But as I said, that book, The Anvil of the Psyche, that's out of out of print at the moment, but at some point a second version will come out, probably early next year or maybe mid next year. But the next book after that was called Walpurgis Night. Walpurgis Night was a book I really loved researching and writing. It was all about the occult of the Third Reich. It was all about the emerging occultic traditions and cultures that arose in Germany from basically the 1860s on, which really took off as World War I was approaching, and then exploded into the psyche of the Germanic people following World War I. And that was a book I enjoyed very, very much writing, because it's a subject that fascinates me. I'm very interested in folk magic systems and folk revival cults and all the kind of things that became the gestative, formative elements that led to what the Third Reich were. The Third Reich were a magical coven that dabbled in politics and war. They were occultists first and foremost. And then the last book I wrote was called The Druid Code, and that was all about my decades of traveling around the ancient sites, the stone megalithic sites of Britain, Ireland, and Europe, and the various mythology connected to them, what I think they mean, did Atlantis exist, and this kind of thing. And again, I absolutely loved writing that book, and I absolutely loved researching it. And then now the current book I'm working on is called The Invocation of Strangeness. That's the working title. I might change it. And it's basically about my own experience in the occult and magical ritual and sorcery, and things I've learned from that, and my attempt to revive folk magic in the modern age, to make people not afraid of the occult, not afraid of sorcery, and not afraid of magic, but to make sure they know what the hell they're doing before they dip their toes into it, rather than getting hysteria or nonsense or out-and-out lies from individuals who are trying to make sure that they don't actually experiment in things that could actually make their lives better. And that's basically my writing career to date.
And in the research you've done so far of these, I guess it would be, from parts of Europe, the roots tracing back of these folk magic sources. We see depictions of in a lot of magic, what your motive is, if it's for the greater good and service to others. There's a lot of people will describe it, or just to serve yourself, in a very self-serving way that's looked upon negatively, often more associated with things like Satanism and black magic, or of course harm to others. Yeah. That is, often a category. But I mean, were there some European roots that didn't really think of it in these polarized ways?
Oh yeah, there was no other way. It was a part of life. It was a way of ordinary people, poor people, not just rural peasants, but also urban ones. It was a way to try and give them some kind of advantage in life that the class system or the ruling system had taken from them. It was done to protect them. These people had nothing else, and they had no governments to look after them. They were basically slaves, and they were very much in contact and in connection with the natural world through how they lived. To them, magic and folk magic and things like that were just another aspect of their life. It was a way of protecting the home from entities. It was a way of ensuring that your cows would be healthy. It was a way of protecting your crops. It was a way of trying to control your environment in a manner that would actually help you and your family. It was probably more common than religion at one point, and probably really, even when Christianity was big, it was probably still more popular than. Yes, there was the odd individual who may have used it out of jealousy to damage their neighbors or to hex their community, but they were very, very rare. And often the people that they hexed had the ability to repel the curse and so on. So yeah, it was it was integral to people's lives. It would have been inconceivable to them that that such things didn't exist or were not used. This is like, these people lived in a world where there were fairies and goblins and spirits, and they were very real to them. They were very real to them because they were able to manifest them, and how they manifest them was, this is why we don't have people in the country really talking about, they don't see fairies or goblins or elves anymore or whatever. The reason for this is because they don't do magic anymore, because these entities are actually attracted to people who do magic or have a magical heightened sense of awareness. One of the things that happens when you're practicing ritual magic or when you're developing a craft as a magician is that these things take an interest in you, and things like books start falling off shelves, pictures start jumping off walls, things start moving around, lights dim, this kind of thing. This is what these people, this is the kind of world these people lived in. Spirits and fairies, and they were as real to them as animals in the trees because they were real to them. They experienced them every day. They did have these incredible experiences with these entities, and this is what people today don't have those experiences for the simple reason we're too busy watching TV, and we've neglected our magical potential.
And so yeah, this could be a good revival. Could spark a good revival, perhaps. Reading books like yours on this topic. Get people more interested in researching, maybe recapturing a bit of that to continue passing it on.
Well, if nothing else, they'll develop the means to protect themselves from sorcery. It's just like, there's an example of it, the Donald Trump thing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the people who are sucked into that are the people who are hating him, and just like, we're having a good laugh in the first hour about them. But these people are absolutely hexed. They're hexed. They've self-hexed themselves. Where if they had an understanding of sorcery and how magic worked, they'd realize, okay, I need to switch this off and get my consciousness back. But they don't have that kind of thing anymore, so they just become more and more insane, and they become more and more psychically deteriorated because they have no stewardship over their own consciousness. And that's what we really need people to do. And this is one of the reasons this whole wakening up thing was a bit of a disaster in some ways, because unfortunately, the first thing they declared was, the world is run by Satanists or it's run by reptilians. And then it puts them in the exact same mentality as Christians, saying the world is run by devils and something like that. And then they were afraid of like pyramids of eyeballs in them and this kind of thing, and the devil sign with the hands, and everything was Satan. Satan and Satanism. The reality is that you don't run from these things, you learn to understand them. That way when you understand them, you're able to defend yourself from them. It's the same reason why the shaman used and their ancient ancestors used to dress up in animal furs. They'd wear the skin of a tiger or the skin of a bear, because they'd want to understand how the bear acted and how the bear worked and how the bear perceived its reality in order to protect themselves from the bear, but also give them an advantage that they could probably hunt the same level of game as well. And this is what's wrong with people. As soon as they have a fear of something, they're automatically a slave to it.
And as far as the mass perceptions in political correctness now that we have in much of the West, they're getting enforced more and more. I mean, you can't speak out against certain things. Like I mentioned, of course, the immigrant situation. A lot of people are getting targeted pretty harshly, prison sentences, or at the very least losing jobs to speak out at all in criticism of these sort of policies. I don't know. I mean, you said you're kind of positive about people waking up. I am concerned about the system of laws regarding some of those issues. I don't know. What do you think about the actual amounts that they're influxing into a lot of the European countries? I mean, do you think there's an agenda to to fractionalize, to more easily control them.
You mean the immigration numbers?
Yes, yeah. I mean, a lot of people think that it's trying to actually be population replacement.
We covered this in the first hour. Yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah, absolutely it is. There's no doubt about that. I don't think there's anything unusual about it. It's happened all through history. I mean, all through history, the Romans used to flood different areas with different groups. It's the divide and conquer is the way of doing it. The Christians were experts at that. They would, play the Catholic Protestant game across Europe, and there's nothing new there. We human beings you have to remember, we're still here. As a species, we've survived. We'll survive this. I mean, you can be concerned about it. There's nothing wrong with that. We can be worried about it. It's probably, you can only, no point in worrying about it. Nothing you can do about it. Or you could actually find a way to survive with it. The way I see it is that, human beings have remarkable tenacity. We're still here. We've survived all the crap flung at us in the past. I've no reason to believe we won't survive the rest in the future. You see, what you're doing, Richard, is, and I'm not talking down to you or anything, I'm just explaining to you, because it happens a lot of people, is that you're coming from a position that's giving them power. You understand? When you say things like, I'm concerned about this and concerned about that, I understand that these are valid concerns. But at the same time, too, we have to also accept that they may fail. And then if we can project ourselves into that idea of consciousness that they've already failed, then they won't win. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like, let's not give them a foregone conclusion that they've succeeded. Let's put out there a foregone conclusion that they failed. And I think that's a very powerful shift in perspective, like I said at the beginning of the show. If you can shift your perspective away from, I'm really worried about these psychopaths who run the world and what they're going to do, to the point to I don't care what they do, they're not going to win anyway. They're idiots. They're going to fail. I mean, look at them. I mean, look at Mark Zuckerberg. Look at Bill Gates. These people are all idiots. I'm not afraid of them. Why should I be? They're idiots, and they're just educated rich people, but they don't have the commons. They don't have the same vital spark of humanity that the rest of us do. They don't have that. To them, being a human being is an alien experience because they're like meat robots themselves. So I'm not worried about them. I'm not bothered. They don't bother me. My attitude is, yeah, okay. I'm not happy about the fact that there's millions of Muslims flooding into Europe. And the main reason is because I'm not happy that Europe is Christian to begin with. And when it seems like Christianity is finally being demolished and forgotten about in Europe, and we're returning back to our pagan roots, this other bunch of this other tentacle of the Abrahamic monster is now invading. And it's not because they're Arabs, it's not because they're from North. It's not racially, it's not even their culture. It's their bloody religion. I don't like it. I don't like Islam, and I don't like Christianity. And that's not a racist thing. Anyone can change their religion. You're not born genetically a Christian. You're not born genetically a Muslim. And that's the only thing about it. But I have a positive attitude to it. And what we'll do is we'll do the same eventually to the Muslims that we did to the Christians. We'll get the Muslims returning to their pagan roots, and that's my attitude. I know that I've met people from places like Iran, and I know that they are not happy about being Muslims. They're not. They don't like it. They know they've been forced into it, and there are growing movements returning back to Persian paganism in places like Iran. It's happening slowly under the surface.
Yes. No, I know of the Iranian Renaissance movement, for example. Dr. Jason Reza Georgiani is a great speaker on behalf of the movement, and that definitely is very interesting because it's trying to go back to something closer to a very non-Muslim past, European past of the people's culture and ancient tradition.
Yeah, and good for them. And these people are up against the wall with this radical version of Islam that's currently taken over. So I have a lot of respect from men like him and women like him. They're very, very brave. And you see, I see the pagan in them. When I look at someone in the Middle East, I see the pagan in them as my brother and sister. I don't see the Muslim or the Christian or the Jew in them as my brother and sister. I see that, it's the person behind that, what their ancestors were before the Abrahamic religions arose. And the problem is caused by that. It's not caused by what they are as people and where they came from and as human beings, because they're still human beings at the end of the day. It's the religious theocratic conditioning on top of them that causes all the problems. I grew up in an Ireland that was torn asunder by two versions of Christianity, and both of them, my attitude was, pox on both their houses, and a lot of, that's the problem. I mean, this is the danger of these theocratic programming, these theocratic mind controls. They make people growing up to believe there's something they're not. Oh, I have to hate the guy down the road because my version of the cult that worships a dead body on a stick is better than his version. Oh, I have to hate the fella down the road because his version of Abrahamic religion, chops the top off little boys' penises and mine doesn't. And it's kind of nonsense. It goes on forever. If you look at the history of the world, all the problems have stemmed from those Abrahamic religions. They really have. Prior to that, there really wasn't. There was territorial wars, but there wasn't things like religious wars. They didn't really exist. People didn't fight over religion. They fought over territorial, and it was all on a microcosmic small scale. And this is the worry for me with these immigrants coming in. Is my attitude is one. It's unfortunate that as we're getting rid of Christianity in Europe, that we're having another version of it coming in the forms of Islam. However, it's an opportunity to get the young generation as they come into Europe, and instead of making them feel like outsiders and making them feel like they're victimized by the society, we can try and put information out there and try and capture some of them and return them back to something what they were meant to be and not what they've been made into.
And I do see your point earlier on the way I was phrasing. I suppose I was trying to ask the sort of questions a lot of the listeners out there might have, but yeah, you definitely have a lot of magical potential, conjuring potential with intent in your words. I mean, it is a spell in itself, and you want to project that positive future, not that defeatist future, and you can help bring it into existence.
Yeah, and a lot of it is to do with communication and contact. I mean, I've seen numerous videos over the years, say people who are in extreme sort of white nationalists or racist organizations, and they were forced to come face to face with a nice black family or something, and you see immediately that switched off. The us and them thing. That thrives in a place where we don't have direct contact. You look at, say, America, right? You look at New York at the turn of the century. There was, in places like the Lower East Side of Manhattan, there was every single religion and race on earth crammed into that end of Manhattan. It was very little trouble, relatively. Okay, there were maybe young, gangs of young people fighting for territory, but there was no out-and-out wars or anything like that, because the close proximity to one another rehumanized them. You understand what I'm saying? You saw that they were just like you close up. Therefore, it was easier. It's when they start putting them into ghettos that we start having that problem. My attitude is that if we can get to a person below the programming, below the control system that has manipulated them, we can get down to the actual human being, and that's what I'm interested in, is finding those people. I'm interested in finding the ones who the real ones below the surface. And I think if we sit in a situation where we're all doomed, we're all going to be run on the Sharia law, all this stuff, well, you're defeating yourself, like you said. You're defeating yourself. And I think the best way around that is saying it's not going to happen, and we're just going to find ways to undermine that through education. And I'm not talking about education, I don't mean school education. I mean through engaging people and trying to light that pre-Abrahamic spark within them to bring them back to what they should be. And it's not just Muslims, it's Native Americans, it's Australian Aboriginals, it's people in Central and South America, it's all of us. I really do feel that we've got we've got to wipe the slate clean on this Abrahamic thing. It's happening in Eastern Europe right now with the revival of Slavic paganism, and it can happen everywhere else too. And I think ultimately what Muslims and Christians are left will probably be a better brand of them eventually. My attitude is like, try to get a person to be what they are below the programming.
Well, when I think of all of the reports coming in from different countries in Europe, there are growing bolder resistance groups to the sort of draconian policies and the immigration, and also actually
but a lot of them are actually manufactured by the intelligence services.
Oh well, yeah.
The English Defence League are absolutely Mossad, no doubt about that.
Okay. Huh.
So I mean, you'd be mad to put go near any of them. Just about every single one of them that has any kind of profile is run by the military or the intelligence services.
Go on.
Okay.
One other promising thing, though, I mean, I do see that more and more European countries are turning away from this anti-Russian policy that the U.S. has been insisting upon. That they're seeing it's all economic, and that that the U.S. doesn't have any grounds for this sort of treatment. This insistence to isolate countries like Russia and China from the U.S. is not being tolerated more and more by the European countries.
I know nobody who's afraid of Russia. I've never met an American or a European who's afraid of Russians. I'd love to know who these people are. They seem to be only Hollywood celebrities and people on the TV.
Well, it seems like the bankers and the war machines behind them, basically of the Western countries. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've never met anyone who's I really don't like the Russians. In fact, most people I know who've met Russians quite like them as people. So I'd like to know where that one came from. Right. Look, the biggest problem in Europe is the European Union. The European Union is the Soviet Union of Western Europe. It basically the European Union is basically a Western Soviet. It operates. It has like its own unelected super parliament called the European Commission. It passes laws without any kind of statutes. But even that's defeatable. I think the British probably ended it with the Brexit thing, and I think a lot of people say, "Oh, is Brexit a psyop?" And I think it is, and I'll tell you how. I think that the powerful forces in Britain, the ones with money, decided they didn't want that. The European Union had nothing for anybody anymore, and they deliberately put the Brexit vote out there, knowing that people would vote against it, and they basically jumped ship, knowing they need the British power classes, the big business, the banks, wanted to get out of the European Union, and they invented Brexit for it, knowing that they may be pretending, "Oh, I'm so upset we're leaving." They may be pretending it, but I think it was all planned all along. I think someone in the City of London in banking said, "Let's finish the European Union off. It's not working." And I think Brexit was the beginning of that. You will see the European Union just collapse now in the next 20, 30 years.
Well, that would be a step in the right direction. Definitely. Just these. I don't know. I mean, perhaps if we could shift things, further to the east more, like I mentioned, Russia and China having a larger role in commerce. Perhaps it could be for the better, just distributing things more equally toward everyone for commerce. Because I don't know, it seems like it's being concentrated at the top in the Western powers. The people in those countries aren't even benefiting from any of this domination that we've had economically anyway, right? So.
Well, I've never been to China, so I can't say for certain. Mm-hmm. I think like life is infinitely better now for people in Russia than it was under the Soviet Union by leaps and bounds. And although there are big corrupt businessmen in these countries that keep all the money for themselves, how is that any different than the United States? When was the last time you saw Bill Gates go downtown and hand out money? It's like it's the same everywhere. The super rich are the same everywhere. That's never going to change. But I mean, I haven't been to China. I can't say if it's getting worse or getting bad. I'd imagine it must be getting better. I think, like, if you look at, if I was being born now in China, I'd rather be born now than be born under the Chinese Cultural Revolution, back in the '60s. So I don't know. I don't know. You see, you hear so much propaganda. It's only when you go to a country that you actually realize what's really going on. You cannot rely on the mainstream media to be giving you a clear image of anywhere. You really can't. You have to actually go there and talk to people on the ground. And you often find it is the complete opposite or reverse than what the media is portraying. I find that all the time.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, when I think of that relating to our perceptions of someone like Putin, I mean, it's all based on how, everything in the media portrays him in relation to, say, Trump or, to Hillary losing the election or these just all these sanctions and war threats or this and that. But yeah, not really having any real information to go on, just what people want you to believe.
I know, I find that amazing. They produced absolutely nothing on the Russian issue. And yet there are still people. I saw, the actor Liam Neeson even today. I don't even know what his stake in this is, being Irish. But he was even saying, "Oh, we're gonna bust Trump now on the whole Russian thing." I mean, do you remember the stories they had? Like, it's like things vanish overnight. 6 months ago, he was supposed to be in hotel rooms with Russian prostitutes and call girls urinating all over him. They were absolutely believing this without any evidence whatsoever. It's back to the mental illness again. They're all gone mad. They've all lost their minds. They lost their minds because, I'll tell you why they've lost their minds, because people have exercised democracy the way the people wanted it, rather than how the media told them to. And for the first time ever, they're finding out that they're not as powerful as they think they are, or they're not as powerful as they used to be. And I think that's what's really happening with these people. They're absolutely losing their minds. They're going insane because they have no plan B. Now, if they had a plan B, or if they weren't mentally unhinged, they would say things like, "Let's wait until Trump is is near the end of his term, and then we'll get a Democratic president in the White House again." But they can't do that. They cannot wait. They cannot accept the fact that they backed the wrong horse. They cannot accept the fact that the world has changed. They cannot accept the fact that the American people have a different opinion than the pundits in the media. The same with Brexit in Britain. They cannot believe it. They cannot accept it because their own irrelevancy is staring themselves in the face. Look, no matter how you feel about Bush, if you think, or Trump, if you can't stand him as a person, or if you like him, or whatever, if you just think he's just another idiot in power, whatever, it doesn't matter. The important thing is, and this is something that everyone should take solace from, is that the mainstream media proved how impotent and facile it is.
Yeah, well, it does seem that the age of the internet is just a gradual stepping stone to us not being able to be lied to as much anymore. I mean, many people's view is shutting down the internet is that it's just not possible. Too much commerce depends on it. The government can make threats. They can do little things here and there, but they can't really stop it from continuing to exist. It's like too much of a peer-to-peer based system. We could just create other avenues of it if we had to. They already have the dark web, but
that's also why they hate Russia as well, because Russia owns a huge or controls a vast section of the internet through its servers, and that's also why Hollywood hates Russia as well. It's because all these Hollywood movies are coming out on Russian free movie sites literally the day they're released. Netflix, everything that's actually produced on pay-per-view TV in the US, every movie in the cinema Russian sites are releasing it for free, and it's costing them money. This is actually a kind of a this is an actual interesting aspect, because it's almost like this is the Russians getting back for all the decades that Hollywood portrayed them as evil. You know what I'm saying? It's like the Russian Hollywood portrayed the Russians as monsters for decades and decades and decades. Now the Russians have the internet, and they're saying, okay, it's payback time. We're going to take everything you produce and put it on the internet for free. And that's and I think that's a big part of it. So there is a kind of a war going on between Russia and the US, but it's between Russia and Hollywood. And I think this is where the Russian psychosis within people like Liam Neeson and all the rest of them is really coming from, because they're being put out of business. And the movie industry has been put out of business by Russians putting the stuff on the internet for free. I think I think there's a real economic war going on there, and I think that's what the Russian thing is really about. The fact that they can't shut down these Russian servers or these free Russian movie sites is driving them crazy, and it does prove what you said, Richard, that the internet is too big and too complex and too intertwined that they literally can't shut it down. Even in China, where they have their own internal internet, I've been told by people there it's the easiest thing to get onto the Western internet. It's just that it's just a formality. It's not an absolute firewall.
Wow, I'm surprised. That's good to know. Because you hear so little from over in China, definitely.
Well, a lot of it is linguistic. They don't speak English, so what use would like Facebook be to them, really? You know, a lot of it has to do with linguistics.
Yeah, no, I mean, because the way they use and construct language has a lot to do with the way they think, not just the way people evolve, right? Yeah. The differences with Chinese that you're aware of, I don't know, could you share a little bit more on that?
Well, that's the obvious thing. From what I've been told, that the Chinese aren't even particularly interested in the Western internet, for the simple reason that everything is not in Chinese. I mean, everything caters to basically English. That's why the internet. You go on Facebook, it's full of Indians. Just about everybody in India speaks English, but almost nobody in China speaks English. So that's why we don't see much of them on the internet, because they're off doing their own thing in their own internet. They don't particularly need access to the Western internet because firstly they couldn't understand it, and secondly we couldn't understand them.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'm assuming too much of the the translate potentials. There's only so much that those functions provide on a platform like Facebook, and I guess I'm assuming too much that the Chinese would know English any more than we know Chinese.
Yeah, and there's another one for you, right? You don't see many Japanese on Facebook. And there's 150 million of them. And yet they're almost non-existent. That's because they're on the Japanese internet. So the world is still more diverse than what all these globalists would have us believe. Where are all the Indonesians? 300 million of them. You know, but we get a lot of Indians for the simple reason that most educated Indians speak fluent English. You don't meet a lot of French people on the internet either. Think about it. Just think about it. Think about how few French people you meet on Facebook.
Yeah, that is true.
They're all off on the French internet. There's a lot more ghettoization and compartmentalization culturally and linguistically. Where's the Brazilians? You know, they all speak Portuguese. They're on the Portuguese end of the internet. So it's like, I think we generally make an assumption that everyone in the world speaks English. That's just not the case.
Yeah, and well, as far as the perceptions of the what the unipolar world, I guess you could call it, are breaking down more and more. I mean, just a lot of these regions of the world just completely live self-contained still. I know there is a lot happening in Africa regarding the Chinese. A lot of they're setting up a lot of even residential areas and places, but planning to ultimately though do a lot of mining of natural resources, but buying a lot of land and having plans for moving in a lot of people.
Yeah, because there's no history of Chinese colonialism in Africa. Therefore, the Africans, understandably, are more comfortable doing business with the Chinese than they would be with the British or the French or the Germans.
Okay,
That's where that comes from. That's where that
that's
comes from. They have no historical baggage with China. And the Chinese, being very clever, have realized that. They looked around the world and says, where's the biggest untapped market that won't have a problem with us? And it was Africa. And they get all the resources there and everything, but they definitely, there's definitely, and African governments will do business with a Chinese company or a Chinese politician before they go anywhere near a European one.
But as far as the trade potential, Europe seems pretty open to resisting any pressure from the U.S. I know these currency systems are having more and more power, competing with the U.S. as far as global trade potential. China has their system fully running now, and they and Russia have been making a lot of deals with each other and other countries. But certainly it is good things are shifting away from the U.S. because as I was saying, the U.S. hasn't even really been sharing any wealth the military and government has with the people. The infrastructure has been deteriorating. The job market is, the unemployment is about 1/3 of people who are able and willing to work of working age in the U.S. on average now. The real numbers out there,
But that's typical, Richard, of empires. This is the nature of the empire. They neglect the people at home. This is why be thankful your nation never becomes an empire, because what happens is that the wealth never comes back to the people in the homeland. Look at the British Empire. The height of the British Empire's power, the late Victorian era, say 1880, say around the 1880s, where Britain, the sun never set on the British Empire, when Britain controlled something like 2/3 of the world, or something incredible. And all the wealth was pouring back into London from all these colonies. You had people beside the ships in the East End of London who were dying of malnutrition in their millions. Extreme poverty up and down England. It never got to the people. And this is the same lesson that's being learned in the United States, that empires don't take care of their own. Empires only take care of the ruling oligarchs and the ruling power structures. And it never filters down to the people, because, and I'll tell you why, this is an important one. In order to maintain an empire, you need to put all your primary spending within the military. And that's where all the money goes. The Romans discovered it, the Soviets discovered it, the British discovered it, the French discovered it, and now the Americans have discovered it. Empire only feeds the military, and eventually that's what causes its downfall. Because what happens is even the support base of the military can't afford to keep it going. That's what's happening. That's why the best thing that, and that's why so many Americans want their military to withdraw and return back to just withdraw from all the countries they're in, just so that enormous expense is not having to be, catered to anymore. And that's why the infrastructure is collapsing. They're maintaining the military. And the same thing happened with Rome. Rome started falling apart because even Britain, between the wars, World War I and World War II, they went into all kinds of economic and social decline. Yet they had this enormous empire, because all the finance and all the exchequer funding was having to go into the military, which was needed to police the empire.
Well, I don't know then, because in all the ways we're discussing here, it seems like the U.S. has already descended, into an oppressive empire. But it does seem like they're just running out of money, and people aren't believing their lies as much more and more with technology. I think it's a matter of time before, perhaps, the people can rebuild a more honest government again from the from the ashes if this government just falls of its own accord, you know?
Yeah, I can't see that happening. They'll just print more money, and there'll always be people who will join the military. That'll never change. What will happen is, I mean, I'm actually very pro-American. I love the US, and I have great faith in the American people. And I think that they could be the ones who could buck the trend. I think that they could be the ones who could actually stand up and say, enough is enough, let's do it the proper way. But it's not going to happen while you have you have this amount of power that Wall Street has. That has to be curtailed somehow. I'm not sure how you would do it, but I think like Americans have tremendous spending power. There's also a lot of use. If, say, a sizable portion of the Americans decided not to shop at a certain store, they'd kill it overnight. Say they all said, like 100 million Americans said, we're not going to shop at Walmart. We don't like what they represent. Might not happen, but just imagine if it happened. Walmart or an airline or whatever would be wiped out literally in no time. That would send shockwaves around Wall Street and around around America, and that would be the way to do it. And I could see something like that happen down the road. But you see, what they do is they want people worried about non-issues, kneeling, pulling down statues, all this nonsense. All this meaningless issues. So someone doesn't actually start a movement and say, I've got a great idea. Let's start a mass movement where we don't shop at Walmart, or we don't fly a certain airline, this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And you would see changes very quickly because you hit them in their pocket.
Or boycott Visa and MasterCard, for example.
Yeah. So use cash.
Yeah, these would be brilliant approaches. We need more organization on, I don't know, do you think we need more grassroots participation, from people?
Organization is useless because it always ends up getting corrupted. What you need are people to become instinctual anarchists. That's what you really need. To cultivate an instinctual sense of anarchy in people. So they're not doing it according to some rule book or some statute or some organization or anything like that. You just get as many people aware of the fact that they have a certain power in themselves, and if they can have the confidence to use that power, then if we can get enough people doing that can work. So that's why I would say that's what happened in the Soviet Union actually. The Soviet Union collapsed because eventually no one in Russia believed it. They would laugh at the newspapers, and that was it. And they just didn't believe it anymore.
And I know they used fax machines to spread a lot of information about the lies of the government and the actual truth. And even
cassettes. They would make cassettes and mail them out. Audio cassettes, this kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, that's what did it there, and that's how you get a better society. Is that you stop believing in the liars and you concentrate on the real thing. And it was amazing how quickly the Soviet Union fell down, only because people said, I don't care, I don't believe it. I'm not going to fall for your hype anymore. And that's happening. People are looking at the newspapers every day and they're realizing what garbage it is. This is why I'm so terrified of Trump coming to power, because the media lost its control.
Brilliant. Well, it looks like we just have a few minutes left. I don't know. Could you tell the listeners, where to go, your website, and just to check out your books and more of your information?
My main website is thomassheridanarts.com. www.thomassheridanarts.com. My YouTube channel is Thomas Sheridan Arts. My other YouTube channel is Open Source Occult TV, if you want to learn about magic and sorcery and mind control. And that's basically it. That's thomassheridanarts.com will get you to everything. And that's it.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm sure anyone out there who's new to your work will definitely want to go there. Well, it's been great to to have you on. Yeah, we just have a moment or two. Be wrapping up in about like say two minutes or so. I don't know if you have any last words for the listeners.
Yeah, I'm surprised there's no callers. I was hoping for some callers.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Either I frightened them away or I spellbound them. I don't know.
Well, yeah, no, I know you do get a lot of web traffic. I think people like the combination you have. You have a an artistic side to you, but just a no holds barred analysis that the satire I think people appreciate as well. So.
Yeah, well, as I said on my old radio show, that I do broadcast now and again the velocity of now. Feck 'em if they can't take a joke, because if they can't laugh at themselves and the absurdities of the world, then there's no hope for them.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, no, you still, I don't know, see yourself as well. I mean, when you first started out, did you focus more in one area than another? I know you've done a lot of writing.
Yeah, well, I started out the psychopathy thing, and that was just really because I was in the mood to write a book on it back then. I had no idea it would sell. That was a shock to me. Honestly, God, that was a shock to me. I thought I'd write a book, it'd sell like 20 copies, and then I'd vanish into obscurity. I was absolutely shocked when it actually took off. And no one was more surprised than me. It really was shocking. But I'm interested in lots and lots of things. I really am. And so I'm very much a polyglot in that way. I'm fascinated by the mystery of life, and that's this kind of thing. And as long as I have those that magical sense of vision of wanting to see the world as more than just bread and butter issues and flesh and bones, that will keep me very happy and very busy for years to come.
Excellent. Well, yeah, we definitely appreciate your perspectives. I think you've had a lot of really powerful interviews I've heard from a lot of people's stations and broadcasts. So I do like the interview aspect. You do lend yourself well to that as well, and you do some speaking in person occasionally at conferences and things too, right?
Yeah. Not as many as I used to, because it got tiring traveling so much. But yeah, I do it now and again. I was recently in Houston, and that was fantastic. And I'll be in England in November, and a few dates lined up next year. So yeah, it's great. I do like doing it, but I can't do it all the time. I literally could do it every weekend. I get asked all the time, but it's traveling is very tiring. I'd have no life,
Well, anyone who's near those areas, definitely check Thomas out. Upcoming this fall, and yeah, we definitely look forward to talking to you more in future. Thank you so much for having, being on again.
Good night, Richard. Thank you.
Have a good night. All right, number one. Well, that was Thomas Sheridan, and be sure to check out his website and YouTube. Please donate what you can to help the station. Thank you again to JP and everyone at Wolf Spirit Radio for listening and the simulcast there. And stick around for the Stephen D. Kelly Show coming up in just about 5 minutes here. Until next time, transcend the construct. Regards.